How much does it cost to cut down a tree? I get asked that more often than not. It's not, hey, come give me a quote. It's right on the spot where I'm at. How much does it cost to cut a tree? Or another thing I like is, hey, here's a picture of a tree that I need cut, and how much is it going to cost?
I don't know, man.
Some people can do it that way. I have found in the years that I've been doing this, that never works for me. My advice to you, if you're a potential customer of a tree service, trying to figure out how are they charging me, um, something to consider if you ask for a quote and they don't come look at the tree and lay eyes on it and just look around the property, maybe steer away from it. I mean, some people might be that good, but a lot of times they're either just charging high and then just hoping that the job ends up good. So if you're looking for best price, something to consider is, did they come out and actually look at it? Right now, I call it 6 things that I look for, as far as how I quote a job. There's overhead, location, availability, risk, and hazard kind of, and your subs and any special equipment that you might need. First bullet point: overhead. Basically, what that means is, how much equipment do you have? How much do you have to make for your company to stay afloat? I'll just, for instance, right now, where I'm currently at in my business, my overhead is $500 a day. That does not include fuel. That actually just includes the notes and the insurance that I have to stay in business. I've got my 500 in overhead. My payroll is around $500 a day, that I end up paying out, and then I want the company to have $500 a day. That's usually the minimum. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean I show up to cut 2 branches for you and I'm going to charge you 1,500. Usually on those kinds of jobs, if I just for me to show up is minimum $500. If I happen to be in the area, in the neighborhood, and you come out and you need one little limb over your driveway trimmed back, yeah, I can work with you there. But if I'm cranking up the equipment from the shop, bringing it to you, it's minimum $500. Sometimes those little trim jobs, you can get 3 or 4 of them, sometimes as many as 5 or 6 in a day. If you schedule it right, you can go knock them out or even tag them on the back end of a, say you had small removal that you can get knocked out in 2, 3, 4 hours, and then you've got a little trim job you can knock out on your way home. You can kind of work that 500 minimum in with that. That way you're not bringing out your equipment for just one little trim job. Bullet point number 2 is location. Where's this at? I typically try to work within 30 minutes of my shop. 45 minutes kind of max, depending on the size job. Anything outside of that, I mean, I've traveled an hour and a half to do a job before, but I've told them, hey, this is pretty far for me.
That's going to cost you.
I'm gonna charge you this much extra just for travel, because it's gonna cost me. I kind of do that to encourage them to find someone else. Sometimes they just really want me to do it. I like to say I've got a pretty good reputation built up here around locally where we're at on the Gulf Coast. So sometimes people would rather pay a little bit extra for me to do it. But for the most part, how far away is it? Take that into consideration. If you spend an hour driving there, and it's a decent size removal, that's going to take you, let's say, 7, 8 hours. Now, how are you going to do it? Do you have enough daylight to get it all knocked out in one day, or are you going to have to spend 2 days there? Something else about location, not just of the job, but of landfills and dumps, and where can you dump your stuff if the customer wants it hauled off. How far is that from your job? If it's 5, 10 minutes down the road, great, that's not that big a deal. But if you're out in the middle of nowhere where your nearest landfill is 30, 45 minutes, now you're burning time moving back and forth to the dump and back. Do you chip brush or do you haul off brush? For me, I've got a chipper that cuts my haul off in like a quarter, if not less. There's so many times I can come in and take out an average size oak tree, and I've just got a forestry truck. It's an 11-foot chip box. It's not that big, but I can chip everything into it, and then even throw the big chunks that won't chip, I can throw them into the back of the truck. I've done those same size trees with dump trailers, before I had a chipper, before I had the luxuries that I have now, and it was four trips to the dump based on brush. So it cuts down tremendously. But again, buying a good chipper, you're gonna be out of pocket a good bit. So those are all things to consider. So far, what's your overhead, where you're at on money, and where you're at on the map. Bullet point number 3 is your availability. How busy are you? I know companies around here that stay so booked up, they're 2 months out. They will name a high price because they have the luxury of that. If they come in a little high and they can't get a job for a week or two, but they're booked out for 3 or 4 weeks, even if, let me do some basic math. If they're booked out 4 weeks and they only secure one job a week and they quote 10 jobs a week, they're still staying booked enough out to where they can stay busy. I mean, there have been times where I'm booked 2 months out, and there have been times where I'm booked out for tomorrow, and I'll be doing a job, neighbor will come out and want a quote on a removal, and that's how I get my next job. So I'll quote it, and okay, I'm pretty freed up. I'd like to get this job so that we can stay moving and stay working. So sometimes, just depending on the size job, yes, $4,000 is better than $3,000, but $3,000 is better than no $1,000.
Other breaking news. Water. Wet.
So keep that in mind whenever you're looking at your schedule, and sometimes, I hate to say it like this, but the customer dictates the price too. Be as easy to deal with as possible. Don't start, I mean, you want what you want. I understand that, and as the customer, you do want to get what you pay for. But if you're counting every last leaf that blows in from your neighbor's yard, just know that if your price is high, that's probably why. It's not just because prices are high, it's because you count every single leaf. Just keep that in mind if you're a customer or potential customer watching this. Bullet point number 4, risk any hazards. This is why I say you got to go out and look at the job, because you can look at a picture and it does nothing for you. It does nothing for me anyway. Maybe you're that good that you can look at a picture and have everything sorted out. That's great. I hope to be there one day, but right now I'm not. I show up because I look for a few things. Widowmakers, how dead is the tree? When I'm cutting it, is it gonna send something loose coming down on me or my ground guys? Power lines, how close is it to the house? How close is it? How many power lines do I have going underneath it? How many hot lines do I have maybe running near it? The number of times that I was cutting a tree and the wind was blowing and it sent the limbs into a hot line and I can smell it and see it zapping. Not my favorite thing to see. Fences, field lines, some people are out in the country, they don't have city sewage. Any utilities underground, gas line, anything that might be a hazard. Water lines, sprinklers. You got to be able to consider all those things whenever you go to back in your bucket truck or your crane or whatever it is that you might have. So know your hazards and what will you have to do to avoid those hazards? How much time will that add to your timeline? And factor all that in. Bullet point number 5 brings me to subcontractors. Who are you going to have to bring in? I don't own a crane. I bring, whenever I need a crane, if I need one bad enough, I hire out a local company here that specializes in that. We've had a 70-ton crane out on a job before. And I don't always need that crane. But when I do need it, I factor the rental rate in for the customer. Something to keep in mind, if a rental costs you $4,000 for a crane, that's what it ended up costing us because it was a big crane. is $4,000. Have a little bit of leeway in there. If a crane is $200 an hour, get an extra 4 hours in there into your quote, because it's easier if you want to knock that off and tell the customer, hey, it worked out, and I can give you a little bit of a discount. They're going to be much happier with that than if you say, oh, well, we had this unforeseen thing come up and now you owe us an extra $1,000. It's just, I've been in that situation. I quoted something out and then it ate into my profit. Luckily, I didn't go into the hole, but it ate into my profit because of something I didn't account for. So now I'm making this video to tell someone else that might be in that situation at some point. So just have room for yourself to breathe on those subs. Another sub that I would consider to keep in mind, you may be a big company, you may be a small company. Maybe you have a stump grinder, maybe you don't. Maybe you rent one, go do it yourself. I happen to sub that out. My brother does my stumps for me. He's got his own machine. That's just something I don't have to deal with. I don't have to go to the job site. I don't have to bring an extra piece of equipment there that is his. And I keep him busy with my stumps. And then he can stay busy on the side with his, if he wants to pick up some stumps other than me. So usually with your subs, it's going to be your crane operators or your stump grinders. I've even seen guys sub out grapple trucks. All they have is a skid steer, and they might not have a dump trailer or anything. They'll bring stuff out to the road, and a guy with a grapple truck can come by later. And I think one of the guy that I'm thinking about, it's $600 a load. So he'll come in with the 70-yard debris truck and just pick it all up, put it in. For some people, that's a lot cheaper than it is than to have your own dump trailer and have to run all those extra trips. Again, it depends on where you're at, your availability of all this equipment, and possibilities are really kind of endless. And bullet point number 6, the Dookie Dagger. Last but not least, special equipment. Some people run, I'm particularly referring to ground protection mats. Some people use them all the time. Some people never use them. I use them as needed. My equipment, my loader is not a skid steer. It is a articulating loader, and it's fairly turf friendly. Granted, if it just rained, that machine weighs about 8,000 pounds. It can still make some ruts. But if you're making 1 or 2 passes, it's pretty forgiving. If I have an area that I'm going to be working in a lot and I know it's wet and it's going to rut everything out, I may lay down a few ground protection mats in that work area, in that workspace, so that I can just help preserve it. Some people don't care. They're like, hey, come in here, tear it up, send it.
I'm still going to send it.
Those are preferred, but they're rare. Every now and then, got to work on a golf course. I can put my machine on a golf course, but if I was doing work there, I would have ground protection mats to lay down in that situation. It's just whether it's your loader, whether it's your crane, your bucket truck, whatever the case might be. Maybe you have a spider lift. That's something else that I personally do not own. When I bring up special equipment, it's different with every company, because for me, what I run is a bucket truck, a chip truck, a loader, and dump trailers. And I can do a lot of work with just that. With the spider lift, I consider it special equipment because it's something that I would use personally. So I can go rent that and use that on a job. Same thing with ground protection mats. Some people go out and just buy them. They're kind of expensive. I've seen them as low as $200 a mat, all the way up to $450 a mat. Plus they're heavy. They're on an average setup. If you get, let's say, 20 of them, you're looking at about 2,000 pounds, and you got to have something to haul those around with. So that's something else to keep in mind, that you don't want to overload yourself with equipment that you don't always use. Remember, you can always rent. And if you're getting to the point where you're renting it once a week, or you're renting it so much to where I'd say over the course of a year, your rental costs what it would cost to just buy the thing, I say buy it. Because the next year, if you stay consistent with that, the next year, that's that much money that you save. When you look at a job, and the longer you do it, the more you'll find out what you need, what you don't need, what's a waste of money, what's a waste of time. So that's the 6 bullet points that I could think of that I work on. I might have missed some stuff, and if I missed something that's that important, I might make another video later. I've been doing tree work full time for 2 years. I did it on the side for about a year and a half before that. So I have paid my bills with just tree work for the last 2 years consistently. So this is what has worked for me. Stuff that I've learned that works out great over the years, and stuff that I wish I'd have known earlier. If you're looking to start a tree service, maybe this will help you. Maybe this will cut out, maybe 6 months of trial and error, that you can hop into here and know what to look for on jobs that sometimes don't expose themselves till 8 months into doing. Let's say you start your tree service and you're doing work for 8 months before you come across a certain special situation, and you go, oh, well, what do I do here? So that pretty much wraps that up. If you have any questions, or if I missed anything, if you learned something, give me a like, subscribe. If you have any questions, leave a comment. If you don't have any questions, still leave a comment. I don't care. I might read it. Maybe my cameraman will read it. Someone will read it, even if it's none of us. Believe that is it. And remember, keep your expectations low so you're always happy.